Hey, this is Bader, and I'm super excited to show my Tony Oliva collection, which I'm pretty proud of. He's one of my favorite players of all time, and I want to just talk about him a little bit because he is a Hall of Famer. He finally got in a couple years ago, and some people feel that he's a borderline player and that he doesn't have the counting stats to warrant him being in the Hall of Fame, and I totally get that. I totally get that. But I'm just going to talk about the argument of why he is an absolute Hall of Famer and negate the whole counting stat thing. So first off, Tony played 15 years, but it's kind of a tale of three different portions of his career. The first 2 years that he played in 1984, and here is his rookie card. He got called up for just a cup of coffee in 1962. And in 1962, he didn't have many at-bats. He batted over 400, but it's such a small sampling that doesn't really count. And then the very next year, he came up and same thing, just a cup of coffee. And part of it was that they didn't like his defense. He started off saying he had a good arm, but he didn't have great defensive ability. And here we have his 64. These look awesome. Aren't those cool? Very cool. I want to put those to the side. But again, in this few at-bats that he batted over 400 again. It wasn't until his third year, and this is really where I would say his stats really start, is in 1964. So from 1964 to 1971, he was fantastic. And here we have a 1965 card. So this should be a 64 photo of him at his peak. He came in just hot. He was never better than right when he came into the league. This is a McGregor. This is a bit harder to find. This might be one of the hardest to find cards that I actually have. Go. And he came up, and like this card says, he was the batting leader. But not only was he the batting leader, he was first in all these categories. He was first in runs, first in hits, first in doubles, first in average, first in total bases, and he was Rookie of the Year. And he actually has the all-time record for most total bases in a rookie campaign. He's also the first Cuban Rookie of the Year. Here we have his 65 Topps, which is my favorite Tony Oliva card. Everything's popping on this thing. The colors with the blues, the purples, yellows, red, everything works. I don't know what else you'd want on a baseball card. This is in my top 5 of favorite baseball cards of all times. If you got rid of values and everything else, and it's just nostalgia and cards that are important to you, and I could only have 5 cards, this would be one of them. Well, the next year, he didn't really suffer much of a sophomore slump. He didn't play quite as well, but he still was second in runs, first in hits, third in doubles, first in average, third in total bases, and second in MVP. So again, he was absolutely dominant. Go. And in that year, this is 66 card, in that year he actually, the Twins went to the World Series, but they lost to the Dodgers. The next year, 1966, he had a little bit of a hiccup in that right after the World Series in 1965, he had a surgery to remove a bunch of bone chips from his knee, which hampered him a little bit, but he still had a very productive season. He was second in runs, first in hits again, fourth in doubles, second in batting average, and again, second in total bases. The next year, he went through his first major surgery in 1966. And going into 67, he was hampered by those injuries, but he still played. And he still played decently, but not nearly as well. Here we have his batting leaders card where he's second to Frank Robinson, who was a Triple Crown winner. But he was 8th in average this year, with his worst finishing in the 8 years. 8th in hits, first in doubles, and 5th in RBIs, which is pretty impressive because he missed a decent number of games because of the surgery and issues. Here we have his 67 Topps. There's also no peachy version of this, and a Valenzuela that I would love to get. The next year was similar to the previous. He had another surgery. This one even more significant. He lost about 35 games to that injury, and he finished third in batting average, but he really suffered in the field. And here we have an Atlantic Oil. I think you got these at gas stations. We've got the decal card, 69 decals. We got the All-Star card. This is actually a really beautiful, beautiful copy. And then we have his 68 Topps, which I am having a hard time finding a good centered one, but that's a beautiful copy too. They also have a Milton Bradley, which I just discovered that I have. Didn't even realize that they have a white border on one of these sides, because I couldn't tell. How can you tell the difference between this and a Topps Milton Bradley, which is made for games? And it's got a white border, and the back is a brighter yellow. I failed to dig it out. Sorry, guys. So after 68, he actually recovered from that surgery. He did not have a surgery after 68. And going into 69, he had kind of a bounce back season to a good degree. And he ended up finishing 9th in runs, but 1st in hits, 1st in average again, 1st in doubles, 7th in RBI, and 4th in total bases. This is the global imports. I had to write that down because I keep wanting to call it international for some reason. And what they are, if you're not familiar, is the crappiest deck of cards you've ever seen. It's just paper. It's paper thin. I actually have this set. Yeah, so that's a different card. Horribly off-centered, these cards. Like, this is actually, I would say, a decent centered one. Lots of times they're all over the place. Finished 3rd in that batting average. Yastrzemski, I believe, won the batting title, or the Triple Crown this year. This card is also a rare card. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite images. That's the 69 Super. Very cool card. If I could only keep 5 cards, this would be one of them, of Tony Oliva. He also, he's a big time when they put him in the little checklist. It's got a 69 checklist. Remember these, the BCCG holders? It's a very, very beautiful copy of his All-Star card. No snowing, which you usually see on these. At least I do. And then we have his 69 Topps. Beautiful card. Going into 1970, he had another good season. He was 8th in run, 1st in hits, 3rd in average, 1st in doubles, 5th in RBIs, and 2nd again in total bases. I hope you see the theme going in here. He was a total bases machine. Here we got the Tony Oliva story. We also have the batting leaders, Rod Crew, Reggie Smith, and Tony Oliva. Interesting thing on this card, this is actually the O-Pee-Chee version. I didn't pull out my Topps one. I've got it in my Rod Crew collection, and I forgot to grab it. But if you go to the back, if you can see this upper left-hand side, you can see it says Rod Crew, Reese, and Oliva, all Minnesota Twins, top 3. This would have been an all-Twinkie batting leaders card. I don't know why Reggie Smith's on there, but little tidbit there. Okay, so we've got that guy. I do have his O-Pee-Chee, and I have his Topps. Subtle difference. Look very, very similar. Slight color variation on the back, but you'll see it says Canada on the back, and also you'll see French written on there. Next, we have 1971. In 1971, 7th in hits, 1st in average, 2nd in doubles, 5th in total bases. Milk duds are disgusting. They're absolutely horrible, but they made a baseball card on them, so I still would have bought them and eaten them if I was around back then. So we got a Milk Duds card. I remember Halloween. Whenever we got Milk Duds, I'd immediately try to trade them. Trade them away. Yuck. Okay. Here we have a 1970 Kellogg's. So 71 Kellogg's. 70. I should have had that one in the stack before. We have batting leaders. He was third. This is the second Tony Oliva card I ever had. Was one of these. I love all the stats and just know, like, this really helps out with the history and figuring out who is good and what was going on at the time. Here we have the O-Pee-Chee, Canadian version. I love the backs. This is the one card where I go, I love the backs definitely more on the O-Pee-Chee than on the Topps version. Here we have the Topps as well. 1972 was a bad year. He suffered a horrible knee injury, and he was basically out for the entire season. So even though he has a leader's card in 72, here we have a Milton Bradley game card. He had led the league batting average of the year before. And here is the very psychedelic 72 Topps. Very cool looking card. I used to not like the 72, and I don't know what has happened. I've heard multiple people say that it's grown on them, and I've said, nope, it never will grow on me, but I was wrong because it's growing on me. But that 72, he had to shut it down completely, and he had multiple knee surgeries, and actually for the rest of his career, he had 6 more knee surgeries. So basically, for all intents and purposes at that part, he was pretty much done. And if it wasn't for them coming out in 1973 with the DH rule, he would have been done in baseball completely. Maybe have been able to serve as a pinch runner or a pinch hitter, and that's it. But in 1973, with his bad knee, he still was able to finish 6th in hits. And here we have 1973 Kellogg's card. That's a beautiful version of it. And his 73 Topps. And I have an insane amount of this card in my collection because right before COVID, somebody on eBay had a stack of 100 of them, and they all look like they came out of vending boxes or something, because they all pretty much look exactly like this one. And I had my, she was my girlfriend at the time. Well, actually, she wasn't my girlfriend yet, but later I went through those and I picked 10 of what I thought was the nicest ones. And I gave it to her to look at. I go, tell me which one you think's best. And she picked this one, and I sent it off to SGC because I want them all in my display case to just look uniform. That was my main concern there. The next year, knees just kept getting worse and worse, and although he hit decently, he was not great on the base paths because he lacked speed, and he suffered in terms of power and everything else. But here's a 74. '75 further declined. Got his Hostess. Wish they still had this on. I wish we still had things that we could buy with baseball cards on them. I know it would make me buy more cards, more products. I just know it. Here's his mini. When I was a kid, these were worth, I don't know, 50% more than the large ones. But not anymore. People have spoken, they want normal, quote unquote, size cards. And here we have his Topps, 75. These are such a booger to get in good condition. They really are. And then we have the 76, and by the time we get to this year in 76, he is just serving as a coach and a pinch hitter. This is the very difficult to find centered. I am still waiting to get one before I have it graded. This is my placeholder. And I had gotten this one, I remember, on eBay, and they didn't have a back, showing the back, and it's horribly miscut on the back. We've got a Hostess. And then the last card I'm going to show, these are all Playing Days cards. This isn't technically a Playing Days card, but I think it's a beautiful one. This is a TCMA 1978, so just shortly after. But I love that image. they ended up using this for a bunch of different years. But I'm not going to show any of those cards. But very, very cool. So all in all, that is oh, forgot to show this guy. These are really cool. Western Oil Fuel Company gives a bio information. Here's all of his stats, which is pretty cool. Here you can see him in the minors bouncing around. You know, he's always batting 300-400. Really, really impressive. Just don't look at all the errors he was making early on. All right, but really cool looking. Really cool piece of memorabilia there. But all in all, he has played 8 years in a row where he was an all-star every single year. He got MVP votes every single year. 7 years out of those 8, he was top 3 in batting average. 5 of those years, he led the league in hits. 7 out of those 8 years, he was top 4 in doubles. And 4 of those times, he actually led the league. And if you took that time period of 1964 to 1971, he led the American League in batting average, most hits, most doubles, and total bases. He was an absolute standout, fantastic player. And if you compare him to his era and use that as the marker, because the 60s were a very difficult time period to hit. That's another thing too. It had a larger strike zone. So from 1963 to 1968, it was the hardest time to be a 300 hitter in modern baseball history. It's very difficult, and that's when he played. And I would put him ahead of other players that were great Cuban players like Tony Perez, Minnie Minoso, Rafael Palmeiro. If you compare him to his era, I think he was more dominant in that 8-year period than any of the other players were in an 8-year period. So the debate's on. Tell me why I'm wrong. But that's my Tony Oliva collection. I hope you enjoyed it. All right, Bader out.